Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Fei Wu. Fei is a bilingual podcaster, English and Mandarin Chinese. She's also the creator and host of Feisworld podcast and Feisworld docuseries. Fei left her job in marketing and advertising to build a company of her own called Feisworld LLC, with a mission to help small businesses and people tell better stories, find more customers, and create new revenue streams. She leads an international mastermind group, which I am a proud member of, and creates courses for podcasters. Her stories have been featured by Dorie Clark in her best-selling book called Entrepreneurial You, as well as Harvard Business Review. Please join me in welcoming Fei Wu.
Woohoo! I'm so thrilled to be here, Tammy.
You better believe it.
Yeah, I am.
So, Fei, start from the beginning, because I think the beginning is such an important part of your story.
The beginning since which age? Is it the business beginning or the childhood beginning?
Well, I think the childhood beginning is informative to the business beginning, wouldn't you say?
I haven't really talked about since birth. A lot of people might not know this about me, but I was born on the army base in China. You know, my childhood was very kind of unusual by the American standard. And my mom, as you know, is a very renowned artist.
Yes.
Very freestyle, which when you think about it, the two of them, how do they get along? Which is, well, they didn't for the most part. But they were both artists. In addition to being an army officer, my dad was a very renowned calligrapher as well, very talented. So as a result, they worked really well together. They were able to grow together. And I think that's kind of maybe unusual at the time. I am in my mid-30s, and I remember growing up and watching most neighbors' kids or most adults I knew didn't really share a career. The parents, mom and dad, didn't really grow together. But I witnessed that, and I really always loved about it, regardless of the fights they had.
That's a really interesting point, because one of the things that I do talk to people about on a regular basis is the idea that, the context that most of us have for work or career is what we witnessed our parents doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we had a parent, for example, who came home from work at the end of the day, sat in their lazy boy chair or whatever, put their feet up and said, "Oh, glad that's over with," then that would be their context for work. If they came home at the end of the day, energized and excited to talk about their day, that would be a different context for work. So it sounds like, unlike, let's say, some of your peers growing up in China, you had two parents who sound like they were somewhat fiery and passionate, but also highly creative and worked together. And a lot of your friends didn't have that. So you had a whole different context of what it meant to work.
Yeah, you just learned something new about me, believe it or not, after we feel like so many lunches together.
Yeah.
Sessions. But I think about my childhood, another thing I've never talked about on these, I feel like dozens of podcasts is one of the happiest moment of my childhood was when I was in kindergarten. And I remember the kindergarten is also part of the army, hundreds of kids. And I remember there was a super long, it's not a hallway. It's like a little playground, but there's a side of the wall that just goes on and on forever. I remember being little and thinking there's so much space to cover. And I remember the color was kind of just the stone ground, like the yellowish, and it was clean, but it was just, regular building. And all of a sudden one day, headmaster had this idea, both of Fei's parents are artists, and they knew they're, well known as well. They're like, what if we asked them to paint the entire wall? So, there was such a magical moment. I wish I had pictures for it, but both of my parents showed up and they just started on the opposite end of the wall. They didn't really talk much. And I remember my dad, and it was just phenomenal to see the whole mural kind of, come together. My dad painted all these little animals. I can remember puppies and elephants that are also well behaved. They're all like very standing straight, but they're very well articulated. My mom, on the other hand, started like very naughty looking, cute, edgy characters. I think all happened in one day. And I remember standing there, Tammy, I couldn't possibly be more proud of I am the creation of these two wonderful people who are doing this, and I'm 4 years old. And I remember my dad on top of that is he's the funny guy. He loves playing with kids and which the moment I remember was after all that was done and said, it was 4 or 5 p.m. All hundreds of kids just ran towards my dad. I don't know where my mom was, but they ran towards him and he was squatting down. And the kids I couldn't even get through the kids. I just remember feeling he's my dad, not yours. And I was actually felt really jealous for a second, but so insanely proud of him.
Enrolled to do this wall, this mural.
Mm-hmm.
We're all proud of them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
What an interesting juxtaposition. So, but your dad was still enlisted in the army at the same time?
Yeah, he was. And that's interesting. My dad was in the army from age 17 till his death, till he passed away. And, and then I remember still talking about the privilege we'll still have, what it all means and going through the paperwork. My mom was in the army between the age of 17 and 21. And she was a rare example of someone who says who wants to leave the army? At the time, you're really not. Not supposed to say that, but it's a really great opportunity. Army, it's almost like this phenomenal, college experience that goes on for decades and, and then it becomes employment and all that. So my mom raised her hand and said, I would like to leave. And she said, she's I want to be educated and I want to be an artist. That's my passion. That's how she transitioned into the Forbidden City of Beijing, China. And that's where she was for the next 37 to 40 years.
I see.
Yeah.
So your dad was able to be an artist, but also serve in the army. Is it a different army experience than in the US? It must be.
Very, very different.
Wow. So those were formative years for you, but yet it sounds like there was always, maybe because your parents had somewhat different careers, you were always a little different from the other kids. I don't know if you felt a little different or whether it was just a distinction, a minor distinction. What was that like for you?
I think it was very different for me. And by the way, I know how privileged I am. Not that my parents, had piles of cash. I just want to call that out. It's not like I could just point to something and they would just buy it from me. But they had so much access to different people. And in a way, just like you and me, Tammy, as podcasters, as hosts, we're getting all these inbound, outbound connections. And
yep.
I witnessed that in front of them. And it wasn't just Chinese. They had so many friends, in particular, my mom as an artist had friends in Europe, in North America, and South America. And these people will come over, bring their children to visit the Forbidden City with us. So I think even though those were formative years, they were super important because my parents, in particular, my mom, always made me feel that I'm a powerful woman, even at the age of 3 years old. I just felt powerful. And I don't know what that meant or what it entailed at that age, but I knew that if she could do these things, she always told me, being as renowned, as powerful as she is, she said, Fei, I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. You are way smarter and way powerful than I am. And very soon the world will see that. It was crazy. Yeah. And so funny.
And this is in a culture, right, that doesn't necessarily hold females up to that high a standard. Isn't that true?
I think at the time growing up, we're talking about the 80s and early 90s. I started to really witness the shift and change. For one, I realized, especially in Beijing, all these, especially for us young girls at the time, all our moms worked. Very rarely that they didn't work, even if it's part-time. But sometimes when we go to southern part of China in certain areas, and I noticed like there are a lot of women who choose to stay at home, raise their children. So I would say that was already happening.
I'm curious about, it sounds like you were raised to be very strong and confident, and in a lot of cultures, even in the US, that's not always the case for a young female. And I know you came over to this country when you were 15 or 16.
I just turned 17. I was on a plane
17.
here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to come over here? And did you know that you were coming over here almost, that was almost a permanent move at that point, but did you know it was going to be
Permanent?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, but I just had the feeling that, the reason, let me go back to the reason why I wanted to come over was honestly because even though I was doing well in school, but how the system works is as you enter, going from literally elementary school, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, every level that you go through, you're either getting into better schools or worse schools. And it's based on standardized tests. It's not based on which district that you live in, that all the families trying to put their kids through the best schools possible. And for me, I was lucky, but I felt like I was barely making the cut, and I was getting into the better and better schools. So by the time as I was in high school, it was very, very stressful. We were easily midnight, 1 a.m. You're 14 years old, and just doing that every day. There was like barely any exercises. There's absolutely no extracurricular activities because you can't afford it with such burden. And I knew that that's what everybody went through. I just really was hoping for that I could find a way out of it, to be honest, because I knew I was always going to be the creative person, being an artist and writer. And I didn't want to spend like 80 hours a week studying math and physics and chemistry. So there was no other option. I remember talking to my mom, who was very understanding. We even explored possibly going to Canada and going through paperwork of like immigrating to Quebec, like crazy stuff we both just remembered recently. But I was 15, 16 at the time. I just started calling up the agencies literally as a child to figure out what my options are. I don't know where I get that kind of level of like project management, like ability to organize these things. And some of the attorneys were really annoyed to find out that I was just a kid. But that was amazing. And my mom and I ended up, visiting a couple of agencies, and we decided on one of them. And that's how I ended up at Freiburg, Maine, out of all places.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So these agencies, what kinds of agencies were these? I don't even know what you're referring to.
There are millions of them all over China now. They're huge ones. I think there's one called New Oriental, but the ones that I applied to at the time, I literally found on newspapers. I don't even know how many of them ended up to be like scams and like not legitimate. But there are small offices where that you go, and then they are trying to place you into high schools. I was still a high school student, so I couldn't, at the time, I think about 99 to 98, 99, there weren't a lot of online applications. They're all paper applications. So, and then as a Chinese family, you don't really know what you're applying for and how to just so many little things that are so trivial that are impossible to do on your own. So that's kind of what they're for.
So they're there to help you get whatever visas or things you need to be able to spend a significant amount of time in this country.
My visa, student visa, F1 visa, was rejected twice, and I had only 3 chances altogether. So by the third one, I got through, which was a huge surprise because at that time I was already planning on staying. If you don't get past, if you get rejected 3 times, which was very, very common at the time, by the way, you have to wait another year to apply.
So you started this process when you were about 15?
16.
16.
Yeah.
Okay. And, when you said a few minutes ago, you said, I had these project management skills, and I'm thinking, project management skills, I'm thinking, there you are, 15, 16 years old, starting to have this vision of what you want for yourself in your life. Like you're starting to look forward and saying, I'm starting to see the kinds of things I might want to do with my life. And I'm thinking, I don't know that I know a lot of kids at that age who know what they might want to do with their lives. I think some do, but to be able to be that proactive about it and take those actions, I think a lot of kids would just go the route, push through the science, the physics, the math, whatever, and then maybe get the undergraduate degree a few years later, find their way into something more creative after they got. I've talked to a lot of people actually who did something like that. So it's very interesting that you plowed ahead so concretely and proactively with this, almost like it sounds like a gut feeling that you had to do this for yourself.
And like it's interesting that you observed that. I think with my mom being my mom, and I feel like only when people get to maybe not even meet her personally, but to see her artworks
Yeah.
and to be, she was, not just one of the first woman, but she's the first person ever in Chinese history to imagine 450 characters out of the most renowned novel called Dreams of the Red Chamber, which is one of the, this is like the 4 masterpieces from China, from the Qing dynasty. And just by reading the books, I don't know, 50 times, she designed 450 characters. And she was 30 years old at that time. She was pregnant with me when she completed this collection, and which took her 10 years. I got, so I think my mom, when we talk about people with vision, I think she really was the one who had a vision. But to kind of say that how that impacts me is like, I too felt like I needed a vision and I needed to do something with my life to make her proud. And, and I somehow just hoping that I would live just as of a full life as she has, and, to influence others.
Wow. And at 16, you set your sights on going, and you knew you were going to go by yourself to the US and be away from this person you were so bonded with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember what it felt like when you were working on this? Did you have any idea what it might be like to be halfway across the world from your mother?
The thing is, I do believe that when she told me, she said these things, and then she did try to take it back like 20 years later. I was like, oh, it's too late now. But she said, when you love someone, you got to set them free, right?
True that, but she was a mature person at the time, right? She was in the adult, right?
Yeah.
We all have to do that, even if we look, I let my daughter go off to college 20 minutes down the road, and I had to let her go, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is a little different.
Yeah. I was really spoiled in the sense, which gave me like kind of a false assessment of how good my English really was, right? Because I was attending regular schools in Beijing my whole life, and my language skills were above and beyond my peers. And part of that, I think, I do believe part of this is genetic, but just part of it. And my dad was someone who could speak 30 different dialects and pretend he was a local when he wasn't. So that was literally his superpower, just very, very smart. And I had really good English teachers, and my mom, as mentioned earlier, had a lot of travelers from around the world. So that was helpful, but they were here, a day, a week. So I still would go back to regular school, but my English was so advanced compared at a regular school. I thought I literally had, between that and just excited to be in America, I had zero fear. I never imagined I would be sick or that I'll not be able to follow the curriculum until I actually said inside a high school English class. I was like, what is happening? I remember going to creative. It's like, oh, creative English, creative writing. That sounds so amazing. I'm a writer. So I went to creative writing, and I saw what the kids were able to do in 20 minutes, go on stage and just like, improv and have to every day remember these words. That I look at literally a piece of paper, is like, out of these 10 words they're going to be on the test, I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
I do not comprehend any of the explanation for these words. I mean, I was gibberish. And so that was my experience. That was a little painful
There was a little bit of a shock when you got here.
but I could redeem myself in my chemistry, math, and physics class. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, I bet you could. I bet.
It's a balancing act for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about, this podcast is all about transitions. Talk about a transition. That was a huge and bold, I think, transition for you to come over here at that age, go to high school. I assume you lived with a family at the time.
I lived with a German roommate inside a girls' dorm room at Freiburg Academy.
Oh, so you were at like a boarding school.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And then you graduated and stayed in the US, or did you go back to China?
I was like the first kid among all the ones who came with me to go back. I actually waited until I was in college. So I applied for college just to see if I could get in, if I ended up wanting to go to a college I like. To be honest, for all your listeners, by the time you come back, you come to the US, go through senior year in high school, you don't have a chance to go back to a Chinese college. I knew that before I left. So you have to make it here no matter what.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because you won't be able to go through their version of not even the SAT. SAT.
Mm-hmm.
There's no version of that you can pass, literally. So I attended college, and the first time for me to go back then was during my winter break, freshman year. So at that point, I had been in the US for a year and a half before I returned home. And my mom literally came out of that van at the airport, like with tears and then, unspeakable emotions. And yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty much though, you were living in the US at that point. You were really establishing yourself here.
Yeah, as a college dorm student.
Yeah.
Establishing myself in my dorm room. Yeah.
Where did you go to college?
Northeastern, just down the street. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's great. And then where did you land after you finished up at Northeastern? Where did you land from there?
So what happened at Northeastern, which made it better and worse, was at Northeastern, you have 3 different co-op jobs. And I ended up working for 3 different companies over the course of a year and a half. So it's one semester every year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
And so I had a really long resume. I had sort of referrals, testimonials. But at the same time, for an international student, what it means is you used up something called the CPT, which is like an OPT, optional training. And which means as a regular college student, if all you did was school, then you have about a year to apply for jobs and you can stay in the US for a year. As for me, I've used up all that time. So I had no buffer time. So which means as soon as I graduate in May, I need an offer that starts. Otherwise, if I return back to China altogether and start applying for jobs in the US, then it's actually going to be a lot harder, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So unlike all the other graduates who start, like 2 months after they graduate, I started the November before. So I started nearly a year before and trying to secure jobs. And my first job was at Sapien Corporation. Also, Sapien Nitro is what it's called now, headquartered in Boston, as really a junior consultant at the time. I was there for 6 years before moving on to Race Point Group for about a year, and later at Arnold Worldwide. And that's it. That's the course of my 10-year professional relationship work experience before I started Feisworld.
So were you doing mostly advertising, marketing, those kinds of things at each company, or were you in different roles at each company?
Yeah, they're all at Sapien, where I was for 6 years. I started off as a developer because I studied computer science and math.
Oh, okay. A software developer.
Yeah, software developer for...
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And that's where I got all my internships as well. And I did it because I felt like again, as I mentioned, the challenge with English, I didn't want to major in business, spend, $250,000 and ended up with no jobs. So realistically, I thought, let's major in something I might not like, but it's gonna pay me and pay my parents back. So, I did that. But between the internships and the first year at Sapient, I knew so intimately well that it was not the right fit for me because I didn't get to interact with anyone. I had no decision making power. I don't think personally I had what it takes to be a hardcore software developer. It didn't suit my personality. So I started to make that switch. And I know that your podcast is about, career transitions.
Right.
Funny enough, at the age of 23, people are like, oh no, you can't do that. Like that was a lot of the advice I got. And thank God I didn't follow any of them is that you're 23. You got to follow this path with your major into your 30s so that you can be promoted. So I made 2 switches. The first 2
while you were at Sapient?
Within the first 2 years.
Good for you. What did you do?
So I switched after the first year, I went from working as a Java developer to working as a business analyst. And I had my strategy, but it seemed so wrong to everybody else. I wanted to be a project manager for these projects, but they're like, you can't be 23, 24 with no experience and do this. I said, okay, what is the certification? What is the training I need for a PM? They're like, oh, that doesn't exist. There's no project management degree in college. So I said, then how does someone do it? They're like, it's through experience. So at the time, you look at most PMs, short for, project management.
Right.
Most PMs starts when they're in their late 20s. So I said, okay, then was the in-between steps and nobody knew. I said, okay, I just made that decision for myself. I probably sound a little arrogant at this point, but I had no place to go. I said, I'm going to be a business analyst because that will help me understand the requirements, the ins and outs of whatever the software, the website I need to know.
Right.
That seemed like a smooth transition. People are like, okay, good luck with that. And so after working as a BA, business analyst for about 10 months, a year, people hired me within the company as an APM, which is called Associate Project Manager.
Right.
And from an APM, I slowly transitioned to a full PM. And that took, to be honest, a pretty long time. And I will say that you probably noticed the timeline that has 2008 and 9 in it, which means the US at the time was the worst economical, not the worst, a very terrible downturn. I remember literally watching people carrying boxes out of the office with ambulance parked outside. It was not a good look. So I didn't get the box. I'm like,
You didn't get the box.
I did not. I was like, oh, I didn't get laid off. This is so weird. So for that one, it was a lot of people got laid off. I was very lucky. So they moved me into a position that I never imagined. And I honestly would never, ever liked, but they had the conversation to say, sorry, you got to do this for a year, which was business operations. What it means, long story short, it's about collections, it's about managing billing and contracts. I was like, wow, this couldn't be farther away from my personality. But while I was there for 1 year, I remember I made the collection DSO, which means days of sales outstanding, down to 3, which broke the company's record at the time, which means everybody paid within 3 days of the payment date. I learned everything I need to know right now as a freelancer. So I step into my current role with full confidence. I knew how that works, except for my dollar amount is much smaller. Right? At the time, I was managing $5 to $10 million.
Right. Wow. So somebody or some people at Sapient saw something in you. So even though there were people telling you from day one, oh, you can't do that, somebody said, yeah, you can do that because you were able to navigate quite an interesting path at Sapient and move into all these different roles and move away from the highly, highly technical role into more, what sounds like more management roles.
Yeah, management with some technology.
You had the technology background, which was essential to those roles, but without your, sort of motivation and your, tenacity, you probably, wouldn't have gotten there. And thank goodness you didn't listen to all those naysayers. But clearly there were people in your corner who said, "Oh, hey kid, you want to do this? Okay. Let's make you a business analyst. Let's make you an associate project manager. Hey, you're doing great. Let's make you a full project manager." And so I think the lesson here is don't take no for an answer.
And I will also add to that, don't take no for an answer. Don't take random advice. And sometimes you gotta trust your gut. And it's really hard to do, especially if people are listening to this happen to be women, young women, immigrant women, LGBTQ community. It is really much harder for us to see ourselves as the decision maker, even for our own lives.
Yeah.
And as an immigrant, you carry so much on your shoulders to say, I literally was thinking, okay, my parents spent $250,000 US dollars. They could have retired comfortably right now, but because of me, they still have to work. I literally, as I'm working, making these decisions, I thought about these things. But I would also say something that anyone can do is make friends at work, make authentic friends at work, and go talk to people. I cannot tell you, Tammy, I feel like I started a movement where I would go up to every department. And this, by the way, this is kind of a theme throughout my career.
Yeah.
Is I refuse to stay at my desk, whether it's a sitting or a standing desk. Walk around during your coffee break, walk up to someone, say hi. And that doesn't mean that you're taking up all of their time. Say hi for a few minutes, see their eyes light up, and then offer to go to lunch together. Because as a result, that's how I found out about all these opportunities.
Right.
And also I was also say, just because you work as a consultant, or you are now someone who is more senior, or that's your path. You're going to climb the ladder. You're going to be that great person making $250,000 a year. Please just walk over to IT, walk over to finance, walk over to collection, and treat people who are behind the scenes as real people. Because I'll say that I had the fastest, better computers because I was friendly with the IT people. So think about the things that you're using every day and who you need to be kind to authentically.
Right. But be authentic about it. I think, and I totally agree with you. There is a way, and that's probably because that is a natural part of you. That's why being a software developer wasn't going to hold you for very long, because I think a lot of software developers do just stay at their desks, partially because that's what the job requires. But also, I think there's a lot of folks who are in those roles who are, pretty introverted and are not naturally the kind of people who walk around and say hello and all that. That doesn't mean that they're not sociable people. But it's something that they have to really think more consciously about doing. So it's very, very good advice. So all of those roles at Sapient, though, I'm still looking for the connection to what you're doing today or what you were doing at Arnold Worldwide, or maybe even Race Point. So help us connect some of the dots here.
Yeah, so I did end up working as a project manager since, the last, I only worked in corporate America for 10 years. I would say out of that 10 years, I spent about 7 years working as project manager in marketing services. So what that means.
Oh, at Sapient also?
Sapient also.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that because I was thinking of more of the technical side of things, but okay.
So I was like what they call the technical PM. We worked, now they're using that interchangeably. So technical PM or digital producer means you work on projects that are generally Internet of Things, even though that could have a really big variety. So at the very beginning, I was working on sort of in-house software and applications like Pretty Dry for financial services companies, like stock exchange, all those things. I did that for a couple of years, believe it or not. And then I saw myself working more for brands I could relate to and like. So I ended up working on, Luxottica brands, meaning Sunglass Hut, Lens Crafters, Provision at the time. And then I had, Talbots, which is like a women's clothing brand.
Sure.
I was for a year. And later on, I had Reebok and Philips Healthcare. There's also more consumer facing
Yeah.
brands. I like more of the B2C stuff. So that gave me a lot of experience working on websites, web applications, mobile apps.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could leverage part of my skills to help people, especially women, minorities, immigrants, to kind of help them achieve something. That was a vision, but the vision wasn't super clear until, I would say, anybody who start out in their business won't be able to see that so clearly. You have a generalized vision, but the concrete steps is something that you have to figure out on your own.
Mhm.
It took me years too.
So was your time at Race Point, was that a relatively short stint compared to Arnold, or?
Yeah. So when I joined the company, it was a sister company called Digital Influence Group, and it
Oh,
was later merged. The parent company is Raise Point, and it got merged about 8 months in. I had the time of my life, wonderful people that I worked with. And, I didn't, Raise Point is more a PR based
oh,
agency,
okay.
didn't really align with my line of work. So that's when I moved on to Arnold.
Right. Well, Arnold is a very big name around here and elsewhere. So,
That helps.
yeah. So that was a big move for you.
Yeah, exactly. And, I really learned to really negotiate as well
Mhm.
as I mature. Another advice I got was don't move around too often. But if you were to ask me now in the current climate, I would say if the current function, job environment isn't satisfying, we know when it's not working out,
Yeah.
start seeking out other opportunities if you decide to stay full time. Yeah, so it was a good move.
Yeah. And then going out on your own gave you the opportunity to really appeal to a clientele that really was more of your own choosing, rather than here's the client, you have to work with them whether you want to or not, kind of thing. Not no no We're not begrudging Arnold Worldwide at all, just
Mhm.
that it's really a very different kind of set of options and choices you get to make when you're starting your own company. So tell us more about what Feisworld is doing.
Yeah, so I started off in January 2016. I can tell you a little bit of the origin stories there
Yeah.
as well, because I literally thought naturally it would take me time to ramp up. And, I want to say briefly, even though I on feisworld.com/freelance, I literally began to summarize everything I've learned from incorporation to taxes to negotiating your rates, all that content that I've made available on my site to kind of document my journey because it's come up over and over again. And for me, I was really lucky to have secured, I had no projects when I left the job. So I didn't, it wasn't like I secured everything, I quit my job, and next week I started working. I didn't. I had very small projects floating at the time. I had savings for, 10 to, like 18 months. I saved up
That's pretty
plenty.
good, though. I mean,
Most people say 6 months. It's just my personal choice. For
right.
some of you, maybe a year, but for me, I was like, no, 18 months. And I got a call within a week, and I started a project within 2 weeks right in Watertown. As you know, that's like driving for
Right.
7 minutes, and
Right.
it was perfect. So while that ramped up, and I started to pick up other projects as well. But um, so the reason why I mentioned that was I would recommend people who are starting out to consider honing in on the skills that they're already known for. And for me at the time was project management and production. So I was immediately hired right back into the workforce, but on my own terms, including my own rate, my own time, rates, days of the week. I pretty much get to choose. We're negotiate more or less.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
but I will say, to answer your question, as of right now, 2019, really my mission and what we do
Yeah.
for Feisworld LLC and the podcast very much align, which is to help independent creators to really live their creative and financial freedom.
Mm.
So how could they tell their stories and create a profitable brand around their stories? And the other is, how do they actually get to live it? Have enough money, know how to not just save more, but how to make more money and be comfortable and actually go out and do the things they love.
Yeah. Oh, I love the sound of that.
Yay. Resonating. I like that.
And talk a little bit about your docuseries as well. I'd love for people to hear a little bit about that.
Sure, sure. So I had no documentary making experience. Of course, as a result, I created another mini series on my podcast to document everything I've learned. And it was as easy. I had this vision. I love how you use vision to kind of use this throughout. I had this vision in 2017 to think, wouldn't it be great if I just write something and produce something, but how the heck are we going to make it happen? So I pretty much kept quiet because at the time I was really busy and the business needed a lot of attention. As I was tabling that, my producer, Herman he's originally from Argentina and he lives in Sweden right now, came over to visit me. And I always encourage this kind of face-to-face interaction between me and my team who mostly work remotely. And he just he made it so simple. He looked at me, he's like, Fei, you should have a documentary. And I don't know why that statement was so powerful from this 28-year-old, very handsome young man. And he said, you should have it. I said, okay, let's do it. So we made the decision we're going to do it. And then that entire weekend, it was like an episode from like Stranger Things where we have sticky notes, walls, literally connections, whiteboarding. We created a plan. We started looking at the things we like and off we went. So we produced a series for people who can find out on feisworld.com/documentary. And I'll give you all these links and create a landing page for you.
Yeah, we'll have it all in the show notes too.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Can we tease out so much good content that I pour my heart into?
Yeah, I know you did. And it's wonderful. And I just think it's, what's really important about what you've done throughout your life really is for people to see what's possible and how things unfold. It's like, I have this image of you just, having a vision, but it's not just about having a vision. It's like just stepping into things, trying things. It's not all been perfect and yet staying open and engaging people and following your heart, but also using your head. And I know what it feels like when somebody says to you, hey, you should do this. That's not that doesn't come under the category of taking random advice, which you were talking about a moment ago where you said, don't take random advice. It's like, we all have those moments where somebody says something to us that's kind of been brewing within us already, but they say it out loud and it just kind of lands. Oh. And it's just the right thing. And you can't even really put words to it. There's no science behind it necessarily, but you just know it's.
I was like taking notes as you're describing. I love how you kind of phrase some of these things. And you know that I really love that about you. And when it comes to taking this is for, like you said, it wasn't like taking advice, but almost seeking a confirmation that, Herman is someone that I've been working with for, 3-4 years. And he feels to me like a brother. It was just incredible. And he kind of very soft spoken said, Feisworld is already providing video production services to all your clients. I know you have not done a documentary, but you could have these guys, on the ground helping you. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And they're like, and you have the project management experience. You can then organize the team and the guests to make it happen. So
Fei, this is so exciting. I love your story. I love you.
I love you too.
And everything that you're about. Is there anything else coming up that our listeners should know about? Looking forward to what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So I am, as I mentioned, I'm going to include the links. I'm really passionate about helping other people, not just women, but I love working with women.
Yeah.
Because I find that women always put themselves second, not first, in their family of any size. And I want to help other people to kind of, find a path to transition from full-time to freelance. And that's what the mini series is about. At the same time, I would say that I am, as I mentioned for the first half of the show, I'm Chinese, and I would love to help people be able to, help overseas Chinese as well. So I'm working on a course in collaboration with Steve Young from simplifyway.com, and we're collaborating on a course to help entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs and also businesses to be able to serve these 50 million overseas Chinese. Overseas meaning they may be living in the US, Canada, Europe, or even other parts of Asia, and to kind of help them promote and not just sell their product, but to really serve this community.
Great. Well, whatever links we can include in the show notes to it, we definitely will. And I want to encourage people to also listen to Feisworld podcast, especially the episode in which I was a guest.
Yes, absolutely. Include that link.
Hey, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for doing today.
So delightful. Always great chatting with you, Tammy. And thank you so much for asking those questions that I was never able to share anywhere else.
That's wonderful. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Fei Wu. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? Is there something you'll put into action that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 046. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you were inspired by this episode with Fei, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.